On today's episode of the Luke Loses podcast, I talked to Renee Jones. She's an author, a therapist, and a coach, and today we talk mainly about emotional eating. I hope you enjoy it. What's up, losers? I am Luke, and this is Luke Loses. Here, being a loser, that's a good thing because we are losing the weight, we're losing the unhealthy lifestyle, and we're losing that negative image we have for ourselves. Now, please remember, I have no fitness or nutrition education. Everything I talk about is from asking people questions, searching the internet, and my own personal experiences. You can check out my website. It is www.lukelosespodcast.com. Or call the loser line. That is 323-920-LUKE or 5853. If you could, hop over to Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to this podcast at and leave me a rating and a review. I would appreciate it so much. And if you could, share this podcast. Send it to somebody you know. Post it on your Facebook, your Instagram. Put it on Twitter. I don't know what you do on Twitter. Make a tweet. It would mean the world to me if you did that. The music that you're hearing right now is by Jake Simmons and the Little Ghost. I will link all their locations in the description of this episode. Make sure to go and check them out. Before we get into today's episode, I want to apologize for missing last week. I was super busy and didn't really make time to record, so I apologize for that. And my weigh-ins, I'm not going to do those weekly weigh-ins anymore. I'm going to do them monthly. I feel really controlled by the scale. It's something I obsess with, and I am trying to put that away and put it behind me. So I figure I will step on it monthly and see what happens. So as for today's episode, I talked to Renee Jones, and she is a emotional eating coach. And I figured it would be great to bring her on, get some input from her, and share it with you guys. Before I share the interview, I want to talk a little bit about my emotional eating. I am really bad about it. I've always said that food gets me. Food is my friend. Food always does what it's supposed to do for me. And whether I'm driving and somebody cuts me off, or I keep getting red lights, or if I'm in an argument with my wife, or my anxiety's going crazy, I'm happy, whatever the case may be, I eat to, I want to say, relax those emotions. Like, I bring it up in the interview, but my wife and I were arguing the other day, and I stopped her and was like, I want to eat. This is making me want to eat. And that was like the first time that I was ever able to catch it. But I think knowing what these triggers are that set me into these emotional eating helps. So if you can try to figure out what causes you to emotional eat, what are the things that you're doing to get that food comfort, I think that would help a lot, because you can try to avoid it. But if you can't avoid it, you can know those are those moments where you want to emotionally eat. So I'm going to just jump right into the interview. This is Eating My Emotions with Renee Jones. All right, so today I have a special guest, Renee Jones. She has a master's degree in marriage and family counseling. And the reason I wanted to talk to her was I seen she focuses a lot on emotional eating. And for me, that is a big deal. So Renee, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Well, I am a coach and counselor and speaker, and I help people overcome emotional eating because, sometimes you can stick with a diet until something happens, and then it's just over. And I did that myself for 40 years. And when I finally managed to figure out the emotional eating part, then I've maintained my weight loss for almost 9 years now.
Wow, that's awesome. For me, I don't know if you know my whole story. I've lost over 400 pounds the past 7 years, but I can never keep it off. I never change my habits. I restrict my calories. I live in the gym. I lose the weight. Losing the weight's easy. Like for me, it's 100%, I can do it. But when it comes to the mental aspect of it, that's where I struggle. I always thought that I could just eat less, move more, and that would change everything. And this time I'm focusing on the mental struggles of it. I have anxiety and depression, and I'm a binge eater, an emotional eater. And I recently started going to a 12-step program, Overeaters Anonymous. I've been doing that, and that really opens my eyes to every part of the weight loss. It's not just about the food, it's about everything. As for like the emotional eating part of it, why do people go to emotional eating? Like, why is that even a thing? What does that do for us when we're stressed or happy or whatever?
Well, think about babies, Luke. When a baby cries, we offer it a bottle or the breast or a pacifier. So from birth, we're taught to soothe ourselves by putting something in our mouths. And unfortunately, many people go from the pacifier to tacos or pizza or a bagel, right?
Yeah.
So we continue that action of putting something in our mouths to soothe us.
What is something that we can do to know that we are emotional eating? Like, is there a sign or triggers or?
Sure. If you're hungry, eat. If you're not hungry, but you just want to eat, then there's something else going on. And I even have an acronym. I say that, it's not hard to overcome emotional eating. You just have to get the hang of it. And hang is the acronym. So the H is, am I hungry? And if you are, sure, go get something to eat. If you're not, what is the A? Attraction to food in that moment. The N is, what do you actually need? Because you may need to talk to someone. You may need to go shoot some hoops. You may need a hug. But what is it that you actually need? And the G is go. Go get that, because that will soothe you more than food ever possibly could.
Yeah, I definitely notice, like, when I talk to somebody, and this goes with the binge eating and all that for me. Like, if I'm about to binge, I can call my wife or I can reach out to a friend, and it gets my mind away from the refrigerator. It does make a lot of sense. Like I mentioned to you before we started recording, like I've recently noticed that these things are setting me to my old habits of food comforts me, food makes me feel good. And I've said it before, food's never talked bad about me. Food's always done what I thought it was supposed to do, and that was make me feel good.
Until
Until it doesn't anymore. I was explaining this to my wife. My wife and I actually had a little argument the other day, and I stopped and said, I want to eat. This is making me want to go eat. With this journey, my wife and I found out a lot about ourselves, and it was kind of like the argument was over in that moment. She knew what she needed to do to help me, so I didn't go into a binge or stress eat. Of course, the argument continued later once everything was settled down, but it's definitely a huge deal when you have somebody there that can help you through it. What you do with the coaching, I absolutely love that. Going through this journey this time, I'm actually noticing there's coaches for so many things that can help you and have the tools and the value to bring to the table, which is amazing. What is something that you do as a coach with it? What are some of your ins and outs of what you do?
Well, I have basically a three-pronged approach. We find the nutrition plan that works for your body, because every body is different. My mother had a different reaction to food than I did. Now we shared some things, but even that close of a relationship, my body is much more like my father's side of the family. So your body chemistry is different. So you have to find what actually works for your body. I confess, I lost my weight on a low-fat, low-calorie diet. And I was tired, hungry, and cranky all the time, because that's not what fit me, but it's the only thing I knew.
Yeah.
So finding what works for your body is essential. And then we move to your baggage, because we all have it. It gets packed for us from childhood, and then we throw extra things in. And when we used to travel, you get back from a trip and there's all this extra stuff in the bottom of your bag. You've got to chuck it out, right? So you'll have space to put something in for your next trip. So my idea is, if we unpack the emotional baggage that you're dragging with you, sometimes for decades, then we can pack for the journey you actually want to be on. So unpacking the stuff you don't need, and packing the tools and experiences you want for your life. And that frees you up to be, the third thing, your best. And we figure out, okay, what is your best? Who are you when you're at your best? What do you need to be that? And how can you be that more often? Because I don't know about you, Luke, but when I'm choosing from my best, I always make better choices.
Oh, yeah.
So we work through a program that has all those things. We got video courses, and we do sessions together, so that you can find out what works, get rid of the baggage, and live more from your best self all the time.
What brought you to the idea of the emotional eating? What was the kind of like your wake up to that it is that versus you're just different? Because that was for me a long time. I was like, I'm built different. A different way. And then, like I mentioned, the Overeaters Anonymous, it opens my eyes to, so many other people. I've been in meetings on Zoom with hundreds of people that are just like me, which makes it great. But until I found that out, I was lost. I had no idea what I was going to do and what could work for me. How did you come to figuring out like emotions played a big role in it?
You said you lost 400 pounds. I think I probably lost a ton.
Wow.
Because my first diet was when I was 10. Now, don't rag on my mother. She was trying to help me. Unfortunately, she wasn't any better at it than I was at the time. So we'd do a diet for a while, and we might lose some weight, and then we'd gain it all back because we'd go back to the way we ate before. So in 2012, I was staring down my 50th birthday. And, women change a lot in their 50s. And I thought, if I don't lose it now, I've got no chance. So New Year's morning, 2012, I started my diet. And 2 weeks later, I had to start again. In February, I had to start again. And again in March. And by April, I actually had to buy a bigger size because I had gained weight. And I thought, this is just not working. So I was doing some research trying to figure out there's got to be a way to overcome this emotional aspect of it, because I would do extremely well until I got upset or frustrated. And then, like you, I needed food to soothe me because I didn't know how otherwise. So I found a lady online who did some coaching. She had a couple of courses, and I bought the course first and then hired her because I thought, dang, she's good. And by my 50th birthday, I had reached my goal weight. And I've been there since 2012.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Because that's unusual.
Yeah. I actually had this conversation with another guest about how, well, you know what? It might not have been another guest. I watched a documentary, I think is what it was. It was called Beyond Weight Loss or Beyond Fat Loss or something. It talks about nutrition and all that. And it talks about how many people have actually lost weight. Like me, 400 pounds, that's a huge deal. That's a big deal. But how much is that success rate? How many people actually can lose weight and keep it off? And for that's amazing. Since you said since 2012.
2012, yeah.
I look forward to it. And like I mentioned, this time around, knowing that it isn't just eat less, move more, I can actually try to focus on changing my bad habits and my negative ways.
And your nutrition.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be that your nutrition needs some adjustment. Maybe you're not getting what you need.
And that's another thing. I've seen a dietitian and nutritionist for the first time ever, learning things that way. Like, that blows my mind that I need to eat this and not that. That documentary I mentioned, they're helping you learn how to read labels and, fat content and all that. And it's totally blows my mind at the stuff that I didn't know going in this, and it all goes back to that eat less and move more. That's what I was taught, and it, like I said, it worked every time. It was like I'm going to 1,200 calories and I'm burning like 1,700, so I'm starving myself. But the moment I go and eat some pizza, I put on 15 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
this time around, knowing the things that I do and learning what I am and being as transparent as I can be, it makes all the difference in the world. And I feel really confident with this time around. And I know there's going to be slip ups. That's another thing that I try to tell people is like, I don't say if, I say when, because it's going to happen. I did an episode a couple months ago about binging. I had a binge. It was like 130 days binge free, and I just slipped. And talking, like going back to that, talking about it with somebody, it makes all the difference in the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's part, I mean, those slip ups, that's just part of life because you're going to run across things. It's not that I never gain an ounce. It's just when I gain 3 or 4 pounds, I think, okay, what am I doing? And how do I need to straighten this up a bit? And it's usually some sort of portion creep for me. You just enjoyed it, you ate a little more of it, or you've lost your sense of what a portion is. You just
Yeah.
have to get back on track.
And speaking of portions, I listened to another podcast that you were on. You talked about the plate sizes, how
Oh,
they've
yeah.
changed over years. And
Yeah.
doing it this time around, I'm actually looked into that, and I did research on the evolution of food and portions and the ease of access of getting the food, like the apps that you can get on your phone. They're amazing, but having that kind of power at your fingertips is a bad news. You know, it's so easy to get junk food whenever and wherever you want.
Well, and restaurant portions are just crazy.
Yeah.
They are crazy amounts of food, really. I mean, I know a lot of people who will go to, say, a French restaurant will say, gosh, the portion sizes are so small. And they look small because we're accustomed to Tex-Mex, you know,
Yeah.
Mexican food or Italian food, the never-ending bowl of whatever. And that's more food than we can process. But it's become our normal.
My wife and I, we actually now we share a lot of our meals because with this time around, again, I keep going back to that. I'm eating what I want. I try to eat like a normal person would. Instead of
Mhm.
eating a large pizza and breadsticks to myself, I might have 2 pieces of pizza and a couple breadsticks. So when we go out to dinner, we'll order something, and I'm like, now I can actually see or feel I'm full, and it's time to get a bag to go or just lose it. Because that's another thing I did research on is like we've grown to finish your plate. It's on your plate, you got to eat it. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. Like that's where it's bred into you that you have to finish your plate. You can't, don't leave the table till your dinner's ready. And I actually, with my kids, I've caught myself doing that. And I'm like, oh, you need to finish your plate. You need to finish your plate. And I'll catch myself and be like, are you full? And that's what I do now is like, I don't say, are you finished? Because that's that mindset of finish the plate. So now it's like, are you full? Are you done? Do you want to
Are you
save it?
satisfied?
Yep. And because for my kids, I've got 3 boys, and I was teaching them to eat wrong for so long. And
Sure.
I don't feel like cooking today, so we're going to go get fast food. Or do you guys just want to do pizza rolls tonight? And that's one of my fears now, is that they have to go through what I've gone through, being overweight and unhealthy, not just obese, but just as unhealthy person. And I don't wish that on them at all.
Before I went to school, my mother said I ate like a bird, just a little bit all day long. And I think we probably kept the cling film saran wrap kind of material business in business, because she would give me a plate and I would have what I wanted. And then I'd go off, she'd put the plastic wrap on it, put it in the refrigerator. And when I was ready, we'd have some more, right? Which was a very natural way to eat. But when I went to school and you had to fit into certain times, you do have to finish your plate so you can get through the day, right? And that it messed me up. but now I know how to do that again. And finally, I love that Clean Plate Club thing, because I have a URL waiting for just the right moment, and it's cleanplateclubrecovery.com.
Touching back on the emotional eating of it, I found a link that was talking about the link between depression and anxiety and emotional eating. Do you have any information on that?
Well, I know it is a factor, because you're trying to keep your anxiety under control. You're trying to keep your feelings over here, and you do that with food. It's like,
Right.
This soothes me. This makes me feel better. This pushes those feelings away, because I don't have to focus on that depressive feeling now. I can just focus on how I feel with this food in my mouth. And that is just so lovely.
Yeah.
And we don't think about the consequence for later.
Everything you're saying, like the food in your mouth, it's making me think of, I say I'm a food addict, and that's technically not a thing according to.
No, it didn't make the DSM code. No, but.
And when I talk about that, the chewing, the swallowing, the nasty feeling that I get from overeating, like I'll go to a buffet and have 6 plates, and I'm miserable, but I love that. So, and on the emotional, I've said it before, like that's cause to celebrate. Let's go eat, or had a breakup and let's go get a bunch of food and ice cream and all sorts of things. So for it to trigger those things in your brain, like with the food addiction, how food will trigger the same pleasure centers in the brain as cocaine and heroin is what they say. And it's so easy to get those feelings from food. And when I first came out, I was embarrassed to say I'm addicted to food, or I love food, or I'm a binge eater, overeater, because I say, there's people out there with needles in their arms and this and that, but here I am, hugging the refrigerator. So normalizing that, and people understand that this is common, this is a thing, and so many people have this problem or these issues. It makes life so much easier knowing how to go at it.
Well, what you're looking for is soothing. You're looking for pleasure, whether that's, unfortunately with alcohol, or worse with drugs, that's illegal,
Yeah.
right? Food is a legal substance. Nobody has that sense of, oh, I've got to call the police on them because they're, swallowing the refrigerator whole.
Yeah.
Right? It has become, it used to be, you saw someone who was extremely obese and they would think less of them. And there may be some of that now, but it is a lot less because there's so many more people. 70% of the population is either overweight or obese. So it's become normalized, which is not helpful for us, because essentially what we're doing is we're stuffing down our feelings and following it with the food chaser.
Yeah. If I don't know that I'm emotional eating until it's too late, what would you recommend me to do?
Well, then you have to kind of back it up, reverse engineer it. You say, okay, I feel this way every time. Okay, now I can see that I was doing great, and then this happened, and now I wanted to go eat. So what happened right before that? What was that thing? What are the triggers for you? My book talks about the triggers of comfort eating. So finding what those are, and then creating a plan for that, because it's going to happen again and again and again. So you kind of figure out your general pattern. And sometimes it's not so much an activity or a situation as it is a memory. How did we come to associate ice cream and pizza with celebration or comfort? Generally, and it's funny because this seems to be specific to men or women, in that men tend to want ice cream at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. They've got through the day, they've done well, they've done their work, whatever, and they're going to comfort themselves or reward themselves with that ice cream. And I think that comes from Little League. because if you won the game or if you lost the game, you were taken for ice cream and later pizza, right? It depends on where you are in the age gap. Or if mom and dad had something difficult to tell you, they took you out for ice cream. So we associate certain foods with comfort. And then we just go to whatever we've got available.
And all these things are clicking, different things. I remember having surgery as a kid multiple times on different things, minor surgeries. And we would always, if we're good, we'll go get ice cream.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
I had an eye surgery. I ran into a sunflower when I was real little, and the doctor said it looked like I had tons of little darts in my eye. I was so nervous about that, but I remember my mom saying, if you do good, we'll take you to get ice cream afterwards. And same thing with my tonsils. Mm-hmm. I remember the doctor said, what's good for healing that is ice cream.
Mm-hmm. And it's cultural. We soothe, we celebrate with food because that's culture all the way back. They used to have feasts, right? We just call them holidays. I remember my grandmother made the best pies. Oh, she made good pie. And it would be so exciting to sit down in front of her piece of pie and we would just eat it so fast that we didn't even notice it. Mm-hmm. So we'd want a second one to enjoy it. Whereas if we had just stopped, sat down at the table, taken individual bites, and enjoy the feeling in your mouth, squeeze all the flavor out of that one bite, then you do truly enjoy it and you're satisfied by it.
Yeah. You mentioned your grandma's pies. For me, this goes with everything in my life. My dad passed away like 11 years ago, and I recently started to go through some of the stuff that I had of his, and it was small things. Like I had his lighter that he used. It was a Bic lighter. It wasn't a Zippo, so it was nothing fancy. I didn't want to throw it away because it was his, but realizing that it's not the lighter, it's the memory. And my mom tore down my childhood home to rebuild her dream home. And at first it was devastating, but those memories aren't in the house, they're of the house. And that goes with the food and the relationship with food as well. Fried chicken or peaches or whatever the case may be. I have a memory connected with that. Mm-hmm. And even the ice cream, had a bad day, ice cream. And once you can separate that and have that healthy relationship with food, that's what'll do it.
Well, and of course, my biggest struggle was around peanut butter.
Oh man, that's my number one trigger food, peanut butter.
But what I finally figured out was that it wasn't the peanut butter itself. It was the memory and the attachment, because my grandmother and I loved peanut butter. And peanut butter, once she was gone, that became the tangible connection to the love and encouragement she gave me. So what I worked out was when I'm circling the refrigerator, getting another spoon of peanut butter, it's because I need that love or encouragement. And that's the only connection I had in the moment. And I just had to transfer that connection to, hey, I have a husband who loves me and encourages me. Go find him. Or I have friends who, my grandmother's not the only person, but she was the one that was the touchstone for that. And separating that, she's not in that jar. Yeah. I almost wish she were sometimes, because, she was my rock. But finding other people who can fit that bill can help. And it's not about the food itself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you have the master's degree for the counseling. Mm-hmm. And how does that play a part in with what you do as a coach and all that? How do you use that towards my emotional eating, my overeating and all that?
Well, the difference between a counselor and a coach is that counselors tend to look at what's happened in the past and how that affects you now. And the coach looks at, okay, where are you and where you want to go? And I find a nice blend of those things, because sometimes it is stuff from the past that is stopping you from being your best. So we go back and we look at that and say, okay, what do we need? Sometimes people just need to be heard. They need their stories to be heard. And then we can pick apart some things, tease them out so that they don't have a hold on you anymore. Whereas with coaching, it's like, okay, where do you want to go? Who do you want to be? How are we going to get you equipped to be there? And specifically for this, it's, okay, this emotional eating is stopping you from reaching your goal. So how do we put in systems and habits, change some habits so that you can now get to where you want to go? And honestly, a lot of coaching is about accountability. Someone is holding you accountable for a particular result. And the coach is that person.
I've worked with an accountability coach, and it is huge. That's again with the podcast, that's what this is, and my Instagram and all that. I use that. I put my stuff out there so it can hold me accountable, because for me, I have a issue where I don't like letting people down. I always worry about what other people think, and I'm trying to use that in this, like if I put this out there, I don't want to let you down by me failing at what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the accountability is a huge deal. Now, before we got interrupted with my internet, I asked you if there was anything that you wanted to touch on. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about?
Sure. I think you were talking about basic accountability, and I know that I am accountable to my clients, and that's one of the best motivators for me to keep me on track and to keep my maintenance going, because I can't go before them and say, okay, these are the things you said you wanted, but you're doing this. How are we going to fix that? How are we going to do that differently if I'm not paying attention to my weight? So I may gain 3 or 4 pounds now and again, just because, the body changes a bit. But I know then I have to pay attention. And Luke, actually, about 70% of the population is just like us. So it's normalizing to recognize that most of us need external accountability to do something for ourselves. We'll move heaven and earth to do something for someone else. But doing it for ourselves, we just have to set up external accountability. And my clients are that. My dog is that. She's a much better puppy when I take her for a walk in the morning. But that walk is really for me. I've just made it about her because that motivates me. So finding what motivates you and finding a person or a coach who can help you get where you want to go, it's crucial.
So in the OA, the Overeaters Anonymous that I'm a part of, giving somebody what we have is a big thing. And that's how I feel with you. What you're doing is something you have that you want to teach and give to somebody else. It's yours, but you want to share it. I love that, because I mean, we all need a little extra something,
Well, if I can help someone heal their heart so that they can make the choices they really want to make, not just fall into old patterns, but they can better themselves and be who they were meant to be, I've done my job, and it's a good thing.
Yeah. That's great.
And one of the things you might think about, I have a rock in my pocket. Can you see it? You see what it says?
Imagine.
I got this through a work thing, and I just like the color of it. But then I thought, okay, I need to stop being quite so cynical and start imagining the possibilities. And I carry it with me on my person all the time because I can feel it. And it reminds me in that moment of, okay, imagine the possibilities and not the negatives here. And it changed things for me. Another thing that I did is cell phones, alarms. I didn't know that you could change the label to something else. I thought you had to have a label. Well, so I changed it to something I needed to hear. So I have alarms that go off throughout the day, and I change them periodically depending on what I need to hear in that moment. And at first I would look at my phone and say, yeah, great. And then it started sinking in because, you know, with those alarms, they go off even if your phone is on silent, right? Yeah. Even if you have earbuds in, it goes off and you have to physically look at it because where the stop is different on the timer as opposed to the alarm, instead of making it consistent. So you have to look at it, make sure you hit the right spot. So you have to read it. And after 2 months, it started to sink in. And it became an incredibly good tool for me to change the way I was thinking.
I'm going to do the alarm thing. That's great. I have tons of alarms on my phone for everything else. I like that idea. I've got an app that pops up periodically that, you know, will give me a quote or something, but it doesn't know what I need to hear.
Right.
So I like that I can, my daily reminder of what I need to hear.
And one of my favorite ones that I've kept on for a long time is that who you want to be? Because sometimes, no, that's not who I want to be, to change that. It's just it's a good tool.
Yeah. And is that who you want to be? That's how I'm approaching life now is, am I somebody that I'd want to hang out with?
Yeah.
Am I somebody that I'd want to be a friend with? And that's what I try to do, is because I want to spread positivity and love and happiness. Now with this journey, it's not only weight loss. I've come to terms with being a manipulator, and I was a liar, and I wasn't a good person. I portrayed one. If I met you somewhere, you might think that I was a decent person, but in my private life, I wasn't that person. Realizing that and working on it, I'm trying to, you know, every day do better. I want to do better tomorrow than I did today. That's my goal. And I actually, when I talking about my therapist, when I first started seeing her, first thing I said was, listen, I've lied, I've manipulated. Just so you're aware, I might be doing that. So just be on the lookout. Honesty and, you know, again, transparency really helps with being the person I want to be, because you have to want it. You have to be honest. You have to be honest with yourself, because for the longest time I wasn't. I would just, I'm not that bad. There's people out there worse than me. It doesn't matter if there is or isn't. You know, I want to be that person that spreads that love.
There you go. Yeah.
Renee, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, where would they find you?
They can find me on packyourownbag.com. I think on all of the social media, it's about Pack Your Own Bag. Or I've got a TEDx talk if they want to look that up.
And I will link all your stuff in the description of the episode. Again, that .com is great. You get some good names for your stuff. Actually think about it. I like that. I was just like, oh, that'll work.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for coming on and talking to me.
Of course.
I appreciate you coming on. I had a good time, and thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you again, Renee, for coming on. I learned a lot, and I hope our listeners can learn something from it as well. I will leave all her links in the description of this episode, so if you want to find her and reach out to her and learn more about her, you'll be able to do that. And if you enjoyed the episode, please leave me a rating and a review. I would appreciate it so much. And if you would, share this podcast. Just go over to Facebook, hit the share button. It would mean the world to me. Don't forget to check out my website, www.lukelosespodcast.com. That's got my social media and other platforms where you can listen to the podcast. And you can listen to the podcast right off the website. The music that you're hearing right now is by Jake Simmons and the Little Ghost. Check them out. I will link them in the description of this episode as well. go give them a follow. They would appreciate it. I would appreciate it. So that is that. As always, stay positive, do the work, trust the process, and I will see you next week.